At Atlanta airport with my son and daughter-in-law, ready for our family trip to Italy, a federal agent suddenly grabbed my arm. "Pretend I'm arresting you and stay quiet," he whispered urgently. I was stunned. His face was pale with shock. 15 minutes later, I sat in a sterile FBI office as he pulled up surveillance footage on a monitor. What I saw made me realize my life was in immediate danger. Comment below where you're watching this from and what time it is right now. Because at 7 a.m. in Atlanta airport, I thought I was just starting a family vacation. I had no idea I was walking into a trap. My name is Gideon Sullivan, and at 55, I thought I had life figured out. I'd built 3 successful companies from the ground up, survived 2 recessions, and accumulated enough wealth to secure my family's future for generations. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for losing Linda. 6 months ago, cancer took my wife of 28 years. The doctors gave us 6 months to fight it. She lasted 4. Her final words still echo in my mind. "Promise me you'll fix things with the kids, Gideon. Don't let work be your whole world anymore." That promise brought me to Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport on this crisp October morning, standing in the security line with my son Tobias and his wife Brittany. At 30, Tobias had inherited his mother's gentle eyes, but lacked her intuitive wisdom. Brittany, 28, was everything Linda had worried about. Beautiful, charming, and just a little too interested in our family's financial portfolio. "Dad, you sure you're ready for this?" Tobias asked, adjusting his carry-on bag. 2 weeks in Italy is a long time away from the office. I smiled, remembering how Linda used to roll her eyes when I'd check emails during family dinners. "Your mother always wanted to see Florence. Figured it was time I honored that dream, even if she can't be there with us." Brittany squeezed my arm with practiced sympathy. "She's watching over us, Richard. This trip is going to be exactly what we all need." The irony of those words would haunt me later. We'd planned everything meticulously: first-class flights, a luxury hotel overlooking the Arno River, private tours of the Uffizi Gallery. I'd spared no expense. After decades of putting business before family, this was my chance to be the father and grandfather Linda had begged me to become. Next, the TSA agent waved me forward. I handed over my boarding pass and driver's license, the same routine I'd performed hundreds of times during business trips. But as the federal agent examined my documents, his expression changed. His eyes met mine with an intensity that made my stomach drop. "Act like I'm arresting you and keep quiet," he whispered urgently, his voice barely audible above the airport chaos. I was stunned. The bustling sounds of travelers faded into silence. It was just him and me, his steel-gray eyes locked on mine with an intensity that screamed danger. "What?" I managed to whisper back. "Don't turn around. Don't make any gestures. Your life depends on it." His voice was barely audible, but every word cut through me like glass. "Come with me as if I were arresting you. Trust me." Behind me, I heard Tobias's concerned voice. "Dad, what's happening?" The agent stepped around the counter, his hand firmly but gently guiding my elbow. "Sir, I need you to come with me for additional screening. Just a routine procedure." My legs felt like concrete as I followed him, my mind racing. In 30 years of business, I developed instincts for danger, for deception, for the moment when everything changes. Those instincts were screaming now. "Is there a problem, officer?" Brittany's voice carried the perfect note of concerned daughter-in-law. "Nothing to worry about, ma'am. Please wait in the boarding area. We'll have Mr. Sullivan back to you shortly." As we walked away from the security checkpoint, I caught a glimpse of my son and daughter-in-law. They stood there looking worried, the picture of a loving family concerned for their patriarch. If I hadn't heard the agent's warning, I would have believed that concern was genuine. 15 minutes later, I found myself in a windowless FBI office, still trying to process what I'd just learned about my own son. Agent Matthew Stone closed the door behind us. 2 metal chairs faced a wall-mounted monitor in the windowless FBI office. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to show you something difficult to watch," Stone said. The screen flickered to life, showing security footage from the check-in area. There we were, looking like any other family heading on vacation. "Watch your son's hands," Stone instructed. I leaned forward as the timestamp showed 7:23 a.m. Tobias reached into Brittany's purse and pulled out a small vial. My stomach turned as I watched my son unscrew the cap of my water bottle. The contents disappeared into my drink in seconds. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. Stone paused the video. "Lab analysis suggests it's a fast-acting sedative. In that concentration, it would have caused cardiac arrest within 3 hours." I gripped the table, remembering Linda's voice from 18 months ago during dinner. That girl spent more on handbags last month than most families make in a year, Linda had said. And the way she looks at our financial statements, it's like she's taking inventory. You're being paranoid, I'd replied, not looking up from my phone. Linda had fixed me with that look. Gideon, I know the difference between curiosity and calculation. That woman is planning something and our son is too blinded to see it. I should have listened. Stone continued the video. After Tobias capped the bottle, he turned to Brittany. The audio was faint, but their lips were clearly visible. It's done, Tobias whispered, his face pale. Brittany squeezed his arm. Remember, we're doing this for us? Those people won't wait much longer. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. By tonight we'll be free, and your father will finally be at peace with your mother. Stone stopped the recording. We're still investigating their full motives, but it's clear this wasn't spur of the moment. My son hadn't just tried to kill me in desperation. This had been calculated, planned, discussed between them. Mr. Sullivan, we can arrest them right now. We have enough for attempted murder charges. But their lawyers will argue the evidence is circumstantial that someone else could have tampered with your bottle. Rich kids with good attorneys have walked away from worse. I stared at the frozen screen showing my son's guilty face. What's the alternative? You continue with your trip. We'll have agents monitoring every move. Let them try again, and we'll have ironclad evidence no jury could ignore. Outside this room, normal people were catching flights to visit family, to live lives where their children didn't plot their murder. They mentioned those people, I said quietly. Who are they afraid of? Stone's expression darkened. We're still investigating that angle, but it suggests they're under pressure from someone who doesn't negotiate. I thought about Linda's final words about fixing things with my kids. This wasn't what she'd meant, but it was the hand I'd been dealt. Agent Stone, I said finally, set up your surveillance. I'm going to Italy. He nodded grimly. We'll wire you with a tracking device and emergency beacon. Agent Diana Wilson will be on your flight, and we'll have local support in Florence. And if they succeed before you can stop them, Stone met my eyes. They won't, but what you're about to do takes incredible courage. My wife always said I was too stubborn for my own good. 1 hour later, I walked back toward the boarding gate, equipped with surveillance devices and a dangerous plan that would either give me justice or get me killed. The boarding announcement echoed through Terminal F as passengers lined up for Delta Flight 58 to Florence. I clutched my boarding pass, the surveillance device hidden beneath my shirt, feeling heavier than it actually was. Dad, you look pale, Tobias said, approaching with our bags. You sure you're feeling okay? The concern in his voice would have touched me an hour ago. Now it sounded like a predator, checking if his prey was weakening. Just tired, I replied, forcing a smile. Brittany linked her arm through mine. Don't worry, Gideon. Once we're in the air, you can relax. Maybe have a drink. We settled into first class. Me by the window, Tobias in the middle, Brittany on the aisle. Can I get you anything to drink? The flight attendant asked. Water for my father, Tobias said quickly. I watched him carefully. Was he disappointed I hadn't drunk from the poison bottle yet? Actually, I'll have coffee. Black. A flash of frustration crossed Tobias's face. Dad, caffeine isn't good for you. You should stick to water. I'm fine, son. As we taxied down the runway, I studied my son's profile. When had he learned to lie so smoothly? So, Dad, Tobias said once airborne, with Mom gone, you're carrying a huge burden running all 3 companies alone. Here it was, Plan B. I've managed fine for 30 years. But you don't have to manage alone anymore. Brittany chimed in. Tobias has an MBA from Wharton. He knows the business. Tobias leaned forward. What if we started transitioning some responsibilities? You could sign over operational control of the Atlanta division. I pretended to consider this. That's a big step. You'd still own everything. But having my name on operational documents would streamline things. And if something happened to you, God forbid, there wouldn't be legal complications. The casual way he said, if something happened to you, made my skin crawl. We could also look at real estate holdings, Brittany added. Transfer some properties into Tobias's name, for tax purposes. They wanted seamless asset transition when I died, which they expected within hours. Let me think about it, I said, closing my eyes and pretending to nap. 3 hours in, Tobias tried again. Dad, about that water. I'm fine with coffee. But you haven't had water since Atlanta. You could get dehydrated. The persistence was almost comical. My son desperately trying to convince me to drink his poison. I'll drink when I'm thirsty. I caught Brittany checking her phone, typing quickly, updating those mysterious people who wouldn't wait. Halfway through the flight, I spotted Agent Diana Wilson 3 rows behind us. She gave me an imperceptible nod. When I returned from the restroom, Tobias held a fresh water bottle. The flight attendant brought this for you. I looked at the bottle. The seal appeared intact, but I knew better. Thanks, but I'm still working on my coffee. The disappointment in his eyes was unmistakable. As hours dragged on, Brittany grew more agitated, checking her watch constantly. Whatever timeline they operated on, I wasn't cooperating. Gideon, she said during meal service, you've barely touched your food. Are you feeling all right? Just not hungry. You should eat something. Keep your strength up. The fake concern was insulting. 7 hours and Tobias made one final attempt. Dad, when we get back to Atlanta, maybe we could meet with lawyers about the business transition? Maybe, I said noncommittally. I saw him exchange a look with Brittany. They were running out of time and options. 9 hours later, as the plane touched down in Florence, I felt relief and dread. I'd survived the flight, but the real test was just beginning. Florence spread before us like a Renaissance painting come to life. The terracotta rooftops gleamed in the afternoon sun, and the Arno River wound through the city like a silver ribbon. Under different circumstances, I would have been mesmerized by the beauty. Instead, I was calculating survival odds. Our taxi wound through narrow streets past the Duomo. Tobias and Brittany pressed against the windows like excited tourists. "Look at that, Dad!" Tobias exclaimed, gesturing toward the Ponte Vecchio. "Mom would have loved this." The mention of Linda felt like a knife twist. He was using her memory to manipulate me. She would have, I agreed quietly. The Hotel Davanzati sat in the heart of the historic district. As we arrived, a distinguished man in a tailored suit approached. "Mr. Sullivan, welcome to Florence. I'm Gregory, the hotel manager." He shook my hand with a grip that lingered just long enough to slip a small device into my palm. "If there's anything you need," he said with emphasis, "contact me directly." Gregory was my FBI lifeline. Our suite overlooked the Arno. Tobias immediately started planning our itinerary. "We should hit the Uffizi tomorrow," he said, spreading brochures across the table. "Then the Accademia, to see David." We spent the afternoon wandering Florence's historic center. The Piazza della Signoria bustled with tourists. Brittany bought a silk scarf. Tobias took photos, playing the devoted son, documenting our family vacation. The performance was flawless. "You know what would be amazing," Tobias said as we sat at a cafe overlooking the Duomo. "A day trip to the Tuscan countryside. These incredible hilltop villages completely off the beaten path." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Here it was set up for attempt number 2. "That sounds lovely," Brittany added, "but maybe too much driving for Gideon. Those mountain roads can be winding." The fake concern was masterful. I can handle a little driving," I said. "Where did you have in mind?" Tobias showed me photos of rolling hills dotted with cypress trees. "There's this amazing lookout point about an hour outside the city. Incredible views, perfect for photos. Very secluded." "Secluded, of course. We could rent a car," he continued. "Just the 3 of us, like a real family adventure." "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, meaning every word. That evening, as Tobias and Brittany went out for dinner, Gregory appeared at my door. "The local carabinieri are coordinated," he said. "Agent Wilson is 2 floors below. We've positioned surveillance at the location your son researched." He handed me an emergency beacon. "Press this twice if you're in danger. Response time under 5 minutes. And if they succeed first?" Gregory's expression was grim. "They won't. One more thing, we've identified their financial pressure. Loan sharks connected to organized crime in Miami. Your son owes $650,000. So Tobias wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. "How long do they have?" "Based on intercepted communications, maybe 2 weeks." No wonder they were pushing so hard. After Gregory left, I stood on my balcony overlooking the Arno. Florence glittered below a city that had witnessed centuries of human drama. Tomorrow it would witness one more family tragedy. I thought about Linda's final words about fixing things with our children. She'd meant healing forgiveness. Instead, I was about to watch our son reveal himself as a killer. But maybe knowing the truth, however painful, was better than living a lie. The next morning, we set off for the Tuscan hills, where the most beautiful landscape in Italy would witness the ugliest betrayal of my life. The Tuscan countryside unfolded before us like a postcard from paradise. Rolling hills covered in olive groves stretched to the horizon, punctuated by ancient stone farmhouses and cypress trees. The morning sun cast everything in golden light. Tobias drove our rental Mercedes with steady confidence. Brittany sat in the passenger seat, pointing out picturesque villages on distant hilltops. "This is incredible, Dad." Tobias said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Mom always dreamed of seeing Tuscany. Every mention of Linda felt calculated now. She would have loved it, I replied, my hand touching the emergency beacon in my pocket. We drove for an hour through winding roads, passing vineyards where workers harvested grapes. The beauty was breathtaking, but I felt like I was being driven to my execution. There it is, Tobias announced, pulling into a gravel parking area. The lookout point. Before us stretched a panoramic vista of Tuscan hills. A stone wall marked the edge beyond which the ground dropped away into a steep ravine. Perfect spot for photos, Brittany said, pulling out her phone. I looked down. The drop was easily 200 feet onto jagged rocks. A fall would be instantly fatal. Dad, come stand here, Tobias called, positioning himself near the wall. The light is perfect. Every instinct screamed danger, but I walked over. If this was happening, I needed it where the FBI could see. A little closer to the edge? Brittany directed, raising her phone. The background will be amazing. I stepped closer, my heels now inches from the drop. The wind carried the scent of wild herbs and distant church bells. Perfect. Now put your arm around Tobias. My son stepped beside me, his hand resting on my shoulder. To anyone watching, it looked like a touching father-son moment. Smile, Gideon, Brittany called. But I was watching Tobias's face, seeing the internal struggle. His hand trembled slightly. This is for the best, Dad, he whispered. You've been so sad since Mom died. Maybe it's time for you to be with her. His hand pressed firmer against my back. Tobias, I said quietly, your mother would be heartbroken if she could see what you've become. Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt pain, maybe the boy I'd once known. I'm sorry, he whispered. His hand tensed, preparing to push. In that moment, I felt strangely calm. If this was how it ended, at least I'd know the truth about my son. But instead of the push, I heard car doors slamming. Polizia, nobody move. 3 Italian police officers appeared from behind our car, weapons drawn. Behind them, Agent Diana Wilson emerged from a second vehicle, her FBI badge visible. Tobias's hand jerked away as if burned. His face went white. Mr. Sullivan, please step away from the wall, one officer called in accented English. I walked slowly toward the police, legs unsteady. Behind me, Brittany's voice was high and panicked. What's going on? We're just tourists. But Tobias said nothing. He stood frozen, staring at the officers with the expression of a man whose world had collapsed. Agent Wilson approached me. Are you injured? No, but another few seconds. She nodded grimly. We saw everything. Your son was clearly preparing to push you. I turned to look at Tobias, now being handcuffed. He met my eyes across the distance, and I saw something unexpected relief. Maybe deep down he'd wanted to be stopped. That evening, back in our hotel suite, it was time to drop all pretenses and face the truth. The Florence skyline glittered outside our hotel windows as I sat across from my son and daughter-in-law in our suite's sitting area. The Italian police had released them after Agent Wilson explained that we needed a full confession to ensure conviction. Now, in the privacy of our room, the masks could finally come off. Tobias sat hunched forward, his hands clasped tightly together. Brittany perched on the edge of her chair, her usual poise replaced by nervous energy. They both looked like defendants waiting for a verdict, which I suppose they were. I know everything, I said, simply breaking the silence that had stretched between us since we'd returned from the police station. Tobias's head snapped up. Dad, I can explain. Can you... I interrupted. Can you explain why you put poison in my water bottle at Atlanta airport? Can you explain why you just tried to push me off a cliff? The color drained from his face. How did you... The FBI has been watching you since the moment you tampered with my drink. Every whispered conversation, every desperate plan, every lie you've told me, they have it all on record. Brittany finally spoke, her voice shaky. Gideon, you have to understand. We never wanted to hurt you. We were just so desperate. Desperate enough to murder me for my money. It wasn't supposed to be murder, Tobias burst out. The sedative was just supposed to make you sick, maybe have a heart episode. We thought, if you were hospitalized, if the doctors said you needed to reduce stress, you might consider transferring some assets to me. I stared at my son, this stranger wearing my child's face. The lab analysis showed the dose would have killed me, Tobias. On that plane, 30,000 feet in the air with no medical help available. His shoulders began to shake. I know, and I've been sick about it ever since. But Brittany said, Don't you dare blame this on me. Brittany snapped, her composure finally cracking. You're the one who owes $650,000 to people who break legs for late payments. Both of you owe that money, I corrected. I've seen the financial records. The luxury cars, the designer clothes, the cryptocurrency investments that went south. You've been living like millionaires on borrowed money for 2 years. Tobias buried his face in his hands. We thought the crypto would pay off. We thought we could make enough to cover everything and still have money left over. When it crashed, you decided it was easier to kill me than face the consequences of your choices. We didn't know what else to do, Brittany said, tears streaming down her face. These aren't normal creditors, Gideon. They're dangerous people. They know where we live, where we work. They've made it clear what happens to people who don't pay. So you made it clear what happens to fathers who trust their children. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Tobias looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Dad, please. I know what we did was unforgivable, but we're family. You're all I have left now that Mom is gone. Your mother saw this coming, I said quietly. She warned me about Brittany's interest in our finances. She told me that girl was calculating, not curious. I should have listened. Linda never understood me, Brittany protested weakly. Linda understood you perfectly. She saw through your act from day one. The only person who couldn't see it was me because I wanted to believe my son had found love instead of a con artist. Tobias flinched as if I'd slapped him. Brittany isn't a con artist. She loves me. Does she love what marrying you was supposed to get her? I turned to Brittany. Tell him the truth. If I were a janitor instead of a businessman, would you have given Tobias a second glance? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to form the lie. That's what I thought. Please, Tobias whispered, sliding off his chair to kneel on the floor in front of me. Please, Dad. I know I messed up. I know I made terrible choices. But I'm still your son. I'm still the boy you taught to ride a bike, the kid you helped with homework, the young man you walked down the aisle at his wedding. Are you? I asked. Because that boy would never have tried to murder his father. That boy would have come to me when he was in trouble and asked for help. I was ashamed, he sobbed. I was so ashamed of what we'd done, of how much we owed. I couldn't bear the thought of disappointing you again. So instead you decided to kill me. We were desperate. We didn't think clearly. Please, Dad, there has to be something we can do to fix this. I looked down at my son kneeling on the hotel room floor, begging for forgiveness he didn't deserve. I thought about Linda, about her final words, about the promise I'd made to take care of our children. But taking care of someone doesn't always mean giving them what they want. I stood up from the sofa and walked to the window, looking out at Florence's ancient streets, where countless families had faced their own moments of truth. The lights of Florence twinkled below like fallen stars as I contemplated the most important decision of my life. Behind me, my son knelt on the marble floor, his wife beside him, both waiting for my verdict, like condemned prisoners. Linda's voice echoed in my memory. Promise me you'll take care of our children. I'd made that promise with tears in my eyes, never imagining it would lead to this moment. Stand up, I said without turning around. I heard them scramble to their feet, hope creeping into their voices. Dad, Tobias whispered. I turned to face them, my decision crystallizing with each word. I'm going to give you exactly what you deserve. Relief flooded their faces. I will transfer $650,000 to pay off your debts. I continued. Every penny you owe to those dangerous people will be cleared. Thank you, Brittany gasped. Thank you so much, Gideon. We'll never... I'm not finished. My voice cut through her gratitude like ice. I'm paying your debts because I don't want you tortured or killed by loan sharks. That's the mercy your mother would have wanted me to show. Tobias stepped forward eagerly. We understand, Dad. We'll pay you back, I swear. We'll work for the rest of our lives. But mercy doesn't mean there are no consequences. I walked to the hotel phone and picked up the receiver. Agent Wilson. Yes, please, come up now. Bring the handcuffs. The color drained from both their faces. What are you doing? Brittany shrieked. I'm calling the FBI, I said calmly, hanging up the phone. You're both going to prison for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. But you said you'd help us? Tobias pleaded. I am helping you. I'm saving your lives by paying your debts. But I'm also ensuring you face the legal consequences of trying to murder me. Twice. Dad, please. Your mother made me promise to take care of you. I interrupted. This is how I take care of you. By making sure you learn that actions have consequences. That family doesn't mean you can commit murder without punishment. A knock came at the door. I opened it to find Agent Wilson and 2 Italian police officers. Mr. Sullivan, she said formally, are you ready to proceed? I am. She entered with the officers, their handcuffs gleaming under the hotel room lights. Tobias Sullivan and Brittany Sullivan, Agent Wilson announced, "You are under arrest for attempted murder conspiracy to commit murder and assault with intent to kill." "This isn't happening," Brittany whispered as the officer approached her with handcuffs. "This can't be happening. You have the right to remain silent." The officer continued in accented English, "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Tobias looked at me with desperate eyes as his hands were cuffed behind his back. "Dad, I'm your son, your only son. You stopped being my son the moment you decided I was worth more dead than alive," I replied. "The boy I raised would have come to me for help. The man you've become tried to kill me for money. But the debts you said you'd pay them, I will. Tonight, every dollar will be transferred to clear your obligations. But that doesn't erase what you've done to me, to our family, to your mother's memory." As they were led toward the door, Brittany turned back to me with venom in her eyes. "You're a cruel old man. We could have been a family." "We were never a family," I said quietly. "We were a target and two predators." Tobias said nothing as they escorted him out, but I saw tears streaming down his face. Whether they were tears of remorse or just self-pity, I'd never know. Agent Wilson lingered after the Italian police left with their prisoners. "That was the right decision, Mr. Sullivan," she said. "Most people would have chosen one or the other, mercy or justice. You chose both. My wife always said the hardest choices are the right ones. The money transfer will be completed within the hour. I keep my promises even to people who tried to kill me." She nodded approvingly. "They'll be extradited to the United States within the week. With the evidence we have, they're looking at 15 to 20 years each." After she left, I stood alone in the hotel suite, surrounded by the silence that follows the end of a storm. Florence continued to glitter outside my window, indifferent to the human drama that had just concluded within these walls. I thought about Linda, about whether she would approve of what I'd done. I'd kept my promise to take care of our children, just not in the way either of us had expected. 6 months later, I sat in my Atlanta home reading the newspaper headline that would close this chapter of my life forever. "Father and son conspiracy trial ends in conviction." The headline stared back at me from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as I sipped my morning coffee. 6 months had passed since Florence and justice had finally spoken. Tobias Sullivan, 15 years in federal prison. Brittany Sullivan, 18 years for being the mastermind. The sentences were everything Agent Wilson had predicted. The evidence had been overwhelming video footage, financial records, recorded confessions. Their expensive attorneys couldn't argue with surveillance footage of attempted murder. "Grandpa, are you reading the scary news again?" 7-year-old Emma Stephanie's daughter climbed onto my lap. Her brother Jake, 9, was building with Legos on the floor. "Not scary news, sweetheart, just old news." Stephanie appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. At 32, she had her mother's wisdom and my business sense, the best of both Linda and me. "The trial coverage finally finished?" she asked. "Looks like it. The reporters have moved on." She settled into Linda's old reading chair. "How are you feeling about it all?" "Relieved," I answered honestly. Justice was served. The people who tried to kill me are in prison. And sad, I looked down at Emma, now coloring. "Yes, sad that it came to this. Sad that your mother was right about Brittany. Sad that I lost a son." "You didn't lose a son, Grandpa," Jake called out. "You gained a grandson who actually likes you." Stephanie and I both laughed. Kids cut through complexity with brutal honesty. "Speaking of family," Stephanie said, "I've been thinking about Mom's birthday next month. Maybe we could visit her grave together." Linda would have been 53. The idea of facing it with real family people who loved me instead of calculating my net worth felt right. I'd like that. My phone buzzed with an email from Georgia Department of Corrections. Tobias wanted to send me a letter. "What will you do?" Stephanie noticed my expression. "I don't know yet." That evening, after Stephanie and the kids left, I sat in my study with the new will. Stephanie would inherit the majority. The grandchildren had college funds. A substantial portion would go to charities Linda had supported. Tobias would receive a trust fund, but only after serving his sentence and completing psychological counseling. If he could prove he'd changed, he'd have enough money to start over. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was hope. I opened the prison email. "Dad," it began, "I know I have no right to contact you. I know what I did was unforgivable, but not a day passes without me regretting every choice that led to Florence. Prison has given me time to think. I've started therapy. I'm learning about financial desperation, about how people rationalize terrible choices. None of it excuses what I did, but it helps me understand how I became someone capable of planning your murder. I miss Mom every day. I know she would be ashamed of what I became, but I think she might be proud of who I'm trying to become now. I don't expect forgiveness, but if someday, years from now, you think there might be room for a son who's truly sorry, I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of that chance. Your son, if I'm still allowed to call myself that, Tobias. I read the letter 3 times. Outside my window, Atlanta glittered in the distance. Somewhere in this city, Stephanie was tucking my grandchildren into bed, teaching them right from wrong. Maybe that's what family really is. Not the people who share your blood, but the people who share your values. The people who would never hurt you, who celebrate your successes and support you through failures. I'd lost a son, but I'd gained something more precious, the knowledge of who truly loved me. And maybe someday I'd gain a son back too. Looking back at this true story, I realize I made a crucial mistake that nearly cost me my life. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the warning signs when someone you love shows their true nature. Linda tried to tell me about Brittany's calculating behavior, but I was too stubborn to listen. This true story taught me that real family isn't defined by blood, but by love and loyalty. My grandchildren showed me more genuine affection in 6 months than my son did in 30 years. That's why I share these grandpa stories, to help others recognize the difference between people who truly care and those who see you as a paycheck. God gave me a second chance when that FBI agent saved my life at the airport. God also blessed me with Stephanie and her children, who became my real family. And I believe God allowed Tobias to write that letter from prison, because even the most broken relationships can find redemption through genuine repentance. The hardest lesson from this true story. Sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of people you've loved your whole life. But it also means opening your heart to those who truly deserve your trust. These grandpa stories aren't just entertainment, they're warnings wrapped in hope. Through all these grandpa stories I've shared, I've learned that if my experience helps even one person recognize toxic family members before it's too late, then sharing this painful chapter was worth it. What's your story? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-preservation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that matter. My son didn't know I spoke Italian. When I heard what he and his wife said about me that night, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The next day, when my son told the house seller to put only his and his wife's names on the deed, using my money, I realized they saw me as nothing more than a foolish old man with deep pockets. I stayed silent, pretending I understood nothing, but inside I was planning something they would never see coming. This story changed my life forever, and I hope it helps someone else avoid my mistakes. Please comment below with your city and country. I want to see how far this message travels. My name is Eugene Parker. I'm 72 years old, and I thought I knew my family. My son Trevor, 38, had been struggling financially after his 3rd business failure. His wife Chiara, a 35-year-old Italian woman, worked at a travel company but never earned enough to cover their lifestyle. I've been a widower for 3 years, living alone in South Boston. After 45 years as an electrician, I had a decent pension and savings. Nothing fancy, but enough to live comfortably and help my family when needed. Trevor had tried everything: the food truck that got shut down by health inspectors, the online marketing scheme that collapsed. His latest landscaping company folded when his partner disappeared with their equipment. Each failure crushed his confidence a little more. Chiara was different from Trevor's previous girlfriends. She spoke with that musical Italian accent, but whenever she got frustrated, she'd switch to rapid Italian, leaving me standing there confused. Same thing when she called her family in Florence. Trevor had picked up enough Italian to follow along, but me, I was always excluded. That feeling started eating at me 18 months ago, so I secretly started learning Italian online. Every evening I'd close my bedroom door and study with headphones. Slowly I began understanding what they really said when they thought I couldn't hear. 2 weeks ago they came to me with what Trevor called the perfect solution. "Dad, we found a way to get out of debt and give you a better investment," he said, settling into my recliner. Chiara perched on my couch, eyes sparkling. "We can buy a bigger house, you live with us, and it's good investment for the family." The plan seemed reasonable. I'd sell my house, add my life savings of $280,000, and we'd buy a family home together. They painted pictures of Sunday dinners, grandchildren in a big backyard, me having my own master suite. "We'll put all 3 names on the deed," Trevor assured me. "You'll be an equal owner, Dad. We're family." "You won't be alone anymore, Eugene," Chiara added. We take care of each other like real Italian families. The loneliness had been crushing me since Margaret died. The house felt too quiet, too empty. Being part of a real family again, having voices and laughter fill the silence, was everything I'd hoped for. I said yes. But last night changed everything. It was 11:30, and I was reading in bed when I heard whispers from the kitchen below. Something about the secretive tone made me curious. I slipped out and crept to the stairs. Chiara's voice speaking Italian. Once we get his money for the house, we can sell it and move back to Italy with my family. My blood turned to ice. Trevor responded in broken Italian, "The old man will never know what happened. We'll put only our names on the deed." "He's so trusting," Chiara continued. "After we sell, we'll have enough money to start fresh in Florence. My brother has that restaurant space waiting." I stood there in pajamas, gripping the banister until my knuckles went white. 18 months of secret Italian lessons had just revealed the most painful truth of my life. My own son was planning to rob me blind. I quietly returned to my room, heart shattered, but mind already working. Tomorrow I would play the perfect fool. The smell of coffee and bacon filled my kitchen as I made my way downstairs. Trevor and Chiara were seated at my breakfast table, their faces lit with smile that seemed too bright, too rehearsed. "Morning, Dad," Trevor called out, jumping up to pour me coffee. "Hope you slept well. Big day ahead?" Chiara looked up from her scrambled eggs, dark eyes sparkling with calculated enthusiasm. "Good morning, Eugene. You look so rested. Are you excited about today?" I settled into my chair, accepting the coffee. "You two certainly seem energetic. What's got you so wound up?" Trevor practically bounced back to his seat. "Dad, we found the perfect house. You're absolutely going to love it." "Really?" I let my voice carry curiosity mixed with cautious optimism. "Tell me about it." Chiara leaned forward, her accent thickening with excitement. "Is beautiful colonial house, Eugene. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, big kitchen for cooking together, and the garden. You will love the garden for your tomatoes." I had to admire her performance. The way she stumbled over English, the genuine seeming concern for my interests. If I hadn't heard last night's conversation, I might have believed she actually cared. "The neighborhood is fantastic," Trevor added, spreading jam on toast with theatrical enthusiasm. "Great schools nearby and only 20 minutes from your old electrician buddies." "Sounds wonderful," I said, sipping coffee to hide my expression. "But can we really afford something like that?" Trevor's smile never wavered. "That's the beauty of it, Dad. With your house sale and savings, plus what Chiara and I contribute, we'll have exactly what we need. And remember, we'll put all 3 names on the deed just like we agreed. Equal partners." There it was. The lie delivered with such conviction, such apparent sincerity. I watched Chiara squeeze Trevor's hand, a gesture that looked supportive, but felt conspiratorial. "Equal partners," I repeated slowly. "That sounds fair." "More than fair," Chiara said, voice warm with fake affection. "We are family, Eugene. In Italy, family takes care of family. Always." I nodded thoughtfully. "Your family values mean a lot, Chiara, especially since Margaret passed." For just a moment, something flickered across Trevor's face. Guilt, doubt. But it vanished quickly. "Mom would love knowing we're all together," he said firmly. "She always worried about you being alone." The irony was suffocating. Margaret would have seen through this scheme in 30 seconds. "So when do we see this dream house?" I asked, standing to rinse my cup. "The seller can meet us at 10:30. Trevor said, checking his phone. "Marco Benedetti, nice Italian guy. Chiara's already been chatting with him." Of course she had. I wondered what they'd discussed in their native tongue. "Well then," I said, patting my shirt pocket where I'd tucked the certified check. $280,000, representing 45 years of saving and Margaret's life insurance. I suppose we should get ready. As I headed upstairs, I heard them whispering excitedly below. Not in Italian this time. They were being careful now, sticking to English in case I was listening. Too late for that precaution. 20 minutes later, we were in Trevor's Honda, driving through morning traffic, toward what they believed would be their payday. I sat in the back seat, watching familiar Boston streets roll by my wallet, heavy with the future they planned to steal. As we pulled into the driveway of a beautiful colonial house in Newton, I wondered what other lies I was about to discover. Marco Benedetti greeted us at the front door of the beautiful colonial house with a warm smile and a firm handshake. He was in his early 50s, well-dressed in khakis and a crisp white shirt with salt and pepper hair and kind brown eyes. "Welcome. You must be the Parker family. I'm so glad you could make it this morning." Trevor stepped forward first. Mr. Benedetti, thank you for meeting with us. I'm Trevor. This is my wife, Chiara, and my father, Eugene. Please call me Marco, he said, shaking our hands. When he got to Chiara, his face brightened. Ah, the lovely lady I spoke with on the phone. Your voice is even more beautiful in person. Chiara blushed prettily, her accent showing through. Thank you, Marco. You are very kind. Shall we take a look around? Marco gestured inside. I think you'll find everything exactly as I described. He wasn't exaggerating. The house was stunning. Gleaming hardwood floors, crown molding, and large windows filled every space with natural light. The kitchen had granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and an island perfect for family gatherings. The previous owners took excellent care, Marco explained. New roof 2 years ago, updated electrical heating system just serviced. I found myself genuinely impressed despite everything. The master bedroom had a walk-in closet and ensuite bathroom. 3 additional bedrooms each, spacious and full of character. The finished basement could serve as a family room. But the backyard really got to me. A sprawling lawn surrounded by mature oak trees with established flower beds, and a vegetable garden area perfect for the tomatoes Margaret and I used to grow. It's beautiful, I said, meaning every word. This would have been perfect for our family. Trevor shot me a quick look at my past tense, but Marco seemed pleased. The asking price is $420,000, Marco said as we gathered in the living room. But I'm flexible for the right buyers. This house deserves a family that will love it. That's very reasonable, Trevor said, slipping into negotiation mode. We're definitely interested, but we'd need to discuss details. Chiara nodded enthusiastically. Is exactly what we are looking for, Marco. Perfect for raising famiglia. I noticed how she let that last word roll off her tongue, the Italian pronunciation natural and musical. Marco noticed, too, his eyebrows raising with interest. Famiglia, he repeated with a smile. You speak Italian? A little bit, Chiara said modestly. I am from Firenze originally. Firenze, beautiful city. I have cousins there. Marco said, his demeanor shifting to something warmer. And you, Trevor, do you speak Italian as well? Trevor straightened with obvious pride. I've been learning from Chiara. I'm not fluent, but I can get by. Marco glanced at me with polite curiosity. And you, Mr. Parker? I shook my head with what I hoped looked like good-natured resignation. I'm afraid not. These two leave me in the dust when they start chattering away in Italian. I just smile and nod. Everyone laughed, including me, though mine felt hollow. Marco studied Trevor and Chiara for a moment, something calculating flickering behind his friendly expression. Then he smiled and said, Well, then perhaps we should discuss the specifics of what you're looking for. That's when Marco switched to Italian, and my world changed forever. Marco looked at Trevor and Chiara and said in Italian, So how do you want to handle the paperwork? I continued examining a family photo on the mantelpiece, my expression carefully neutral, while my heart began to race. Here it was, the moment of truth I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Trevor responded in his broken but confident Italian, We want only my wife's name and mine on the deed. Marco's eyebrows furrowed slightly. But your father is contributing the money, correct? Yes, Chiara said smoothly in Italian, but he doesn't need to be on the legal documents. It's simpler this way. I picked up another photo, this one of Marco with what looked like his own family, and pretended to study it with interest. My hands were steady, but inside everything was crumbling. Trevor leaned forward conspiratorially. The old man doesn't understand anything anyway, he said in Italian. He'll sign whatever we put in front of him. The casual cruelty in his voice hit me like a physical blow. This was my son. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, walked down the aisle at his wedding. And he was talking about me like I was some senile fool to be manipulated. Marco shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Are you sure about this? It doesn't seem right to me. Don't worry about it, Trevor said, waving his hand dismissively. He trusts us completely. He'll never find out. Chiara nodded in agreement. It's really better for taxes this way. Less complicated paperwork. We can always add him later if needed. But we won't need to, Trevor added with a smirk. This way we have full control over the property decisions. I set down the photo carefully, my vision blurring for just a moment. The way they talked about control, like I was just an inconvenience to be managed, rather than the father who'd sacrificed everything for them. Marco looked increasingly troubled. I have to say, this makes me very uncomfortable. The man seems like a good father. He is, Trevor said carefully, but he's getting older and sometimes gets confused about financial matters. We're just looking out for his best interests. The lies came so easily to him. I wondered how long they'd been practicing these justifications for stealing my life savings. Look, Trevor said, his voice taking on a harder edge. Do you want to make this sale or not? We have the money, we love the house, and we're ready to move forward. The details of our family arrangement are our business. Marco was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with his conscience. Finally, he sighed. It's your family. I suppose you know what's best. Exactly, Trevor said, his smile returning. We know what's best for everyone involved. I moved to examine a bookshelf, running my finger along the spine of an Italian cookbook, while my son and daughter-in-law continued to discuss the logistics of their betrayal. They talked about timeline, about how quickly they could get me to sign documents, about which bank would process the paperwork fastest. Every word was a knife twist, but I kept my face blank, my posture relaxed. Just a confused old man admiring someone else's belongings, while the adults handled the important business. So we're agreed then, Chiara said finally. Only our names on all the documents. If that's what you want, Marco said reluctantly. Perfect, Trevor said. This is going to work out beautifully. I sat there in silence, my heart breaking with every casual word of their conspiracy, but my mind was already forming a plan. The leather seats of Trevor's Honda felt cold against my back as we pulled away from Marco's house. Through the windshield, I watched the beautiful colonial shrink in the distance, the home that should have been our fresh start, now forever tainted. Trevor drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, practically vibrating with excitement. Chiara scrolled through her phone with a satisfied smile. They exchanged glances that said everything had gone according to plan. Dad, what did you think of the house? Trevor asked, catching my eye in the rearview mirror. You were so quiet back there. I cleared my throat, forcing normalcy into my voice. Just taking it all in, son. It's a big decision. The words came out steady, but inside every syllable felt like swallowing glass. But you left it right. Chiara turned to face me, eyes bright with anticipation. The garden especially. I could see you imagining your tomatoes there. Yes, I said simply. It would have been perfect. Trevor frowned at my past tense. Would have been Dad were buying this house. It's happening. Of course, I corrected quickly. It will be perfect. I'm just overwhelmed. At my age, change doesn't come easy. That's exactly why this is so great, Trevor said enthusiastically. You won't have to worry about maintenance, property taxes, any of that stuff. Chiara and I will handle all the adult responsibilities. Adult responsibilities? As if 45 years of mortgages and repairs hadn't been adult enough. Your father seems happy with it, Chiara said to Trevor in English satisfaction clear in her undertone. I stared out the window at familiar Boston neighborhoods, thinking about all the years I'd driven these streets, to work sites, to Trevor's Little League games. When had my son become someone who could speak about me with such contempt? When we got home, Trevor immediately pulled out wine. This calls for a celebration, he announced, producing 2 glasses. To new beginnings. None for me? I said, waving off the glass. I'm feeling tired. Think I'll head upstairs early. Come on, Dad, Trevor pressed. Just 1 glass. We're about to become homeowners together. Really, son, I'm exhausted. I patted his shoulder with forced affection. You two celebrate. You deserve it. I climbed the stairs slowly, hearing their excited whispers below. Once in my bedroom, I closed the door and sat heavily on the bed. 38 years of being Trevor's father. I remembered teaching him to tie shoes, helping with homework, his wedding day hug. When he whispered, "Thanks for everything, Dad." Where had that boy gone? I pulled out my laptop, a Christmas gift from Trevor 2 years ago, and opened the browser. If they thought I was some confused old man who'd sign anything, they were about to learn otherwise. I researched property law, deed transfers, power of attorney documents. I read about elder fraud, about children who exploited their parents' trust. I learned about legal protections, asset safeguarding, financial abuse. Margaret's voice echoed in my memory. Eugene, you're too trusting. Not everyone has your good heart. Gone 3 years, but still trying to protect me. The celebration downstairs continued for another hour. Laughter, music, clinking glasses. They were toasting their future with my money, planning their escape with my life savings. That night I didn't sleep. I planned. The next morning, while Trevor was at work and Chiara was out shopping, I made the phone calls that would change everything. My hands were steady as I dialed Catherine Brooks' number. Catherine had handled Margaret's estate, and I trusted her completely. Brooks and Associates, this is Catherine. Catherine, it's Eugene Parker. I need to make urgent changes to my will and estate planning. There was a pause. Is everything all right? You sound stressed? I've discovered some things about my family. I need to protect my assets. Can you see me today? Of course. 2 o'clock. Bring any documents regarding recent financial discussions. After hanging up, I drove to First National, my bank for 30 years. The teller, Bethany, recognized me immediately. Good morning, Mr. Parker. How can we help you? I need to cancel this certified check and move funds around. I said, sliding the $280,000 check across the counter. Void this and transfer the full amount to a new account. Only my name. Bethany's eyes widened. Of course, sir. This might take a few minutes. While the paperwork processed, I made the call that would either be brilliant or insane. I dialed Marco's number. Hello, Marco Benedetti speaking. I spoke in Italian. This is Eugene Parker. I understand everything you discussed yesterday. Silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Mr. Parker, Marco finally said in Italian, shocked. You speak Italian? Fluently, I replied, and I heard every word my son said about me. Madonna mia, Marco whispered. I was so uncomfortable with that conversation. I almost called you last night. I'm glad you didn't. I needed time to think. But now I need your help. Anything, Marco said immediately. What they planned was terrible. How can I help? I want to buy your house myself, not with them. Just me. Can you hold off on paperwork with Trevor and Chiara? Of course, but can you afford it alone? I have the full amount in cash, but I need you to call Trevor this afternoon. Tell him there's a title complication that needs resolving. Stall them for a week. Marco chuckled with relief. It would be my pleasure, Mr. Parker. Those two don't deserve this house, and they certainly don't deserve a father like you. One more thing, I said. Tomorrow evening I'm confronting them. I want you there as a witness. 7 o'clock at my house on Ashford Street. Absolutely. And when you see how shocked they are that you speak Italian, I'll try not to smile too much. He laughed. I make no promises, my friend. By 4 o'clock I had met with Catherine and restructured my entire estate. Trevor was no longer my primary beneficiary. That honor went to the local veterans charity. I had established a trust for my care with Catherine as trustee instead of Trevor. The certified check was voided and money transferred to my private account. Marco had called Trevor with news of title complications delaying the sale. As I sat in my kitchen that evening, listening to Trevor pace upstairs, complaining loudly on the phone about the delay, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months control. By evening, everything was in place for tomorrow's confrontation. When Trevor and Chiara came home that evening, I was waiting in the living room with documents spread across the coffee table. Bank statements, legal papers, and my new will were arranged like evidence in a courtroom. Trevor stopped short when he saw me. Dad, what's all this paperwork? Sit down, both of you, I said calmly. We need to talk. Chiara looked at Trevor with concern, her eyes darting between the documents and my face. She could sense something was wrong. Is everything okay? Trevor asked, settling onto the couch tensely. You look serious. I have something to tell you both. I began in English, then, without warning, switched to Italian. I understand everything you said to Marco yesterday. The change was instantaneous. Trevor's face went completely white. Chiara's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock and terror. Trevor started in English, but I cut him off. No, I said firmly in Italian. We're having this conversation in the language you thought I couldn't understand. You thought I was just a foolish old man with deep pockets, didn't you? Chiara began to cry, shaking her head frantically. Eugene, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice growing harder. I understand that you planned to steal my money and abandon me. I understand that you discussed putting me in a nursing home like some inconvenient furniture. I understand that my own son called me the old man who doesn't understand anything anyway. Trevor tried to stand, hands shaking. Dad, listen, it wasn't like that. Sit down, I commanded in Italian, and something in my tone made him collapse back. You were trying to rob me. Let's call it what it is. We needed the money. Chiara sobbed. My family in Italy has debts, and Trevor's business, so you decided to steal from the man who raised your husband, who worked double shifts for 45 years to save that money. My voice was ice cold. Whose wife's life insurance you were planning to take? Trevor finally croaked. How long have you known Italian? 18 months, I said. 18 months of listening to you exclude me from conversations. 18 months of being treated like I was too stupid to matter. I picked up the bank statement. The money is gone. All of it. transferred to an account with only my name. Trevor's eyes went wide. You can't do that? We had an agreement. We had an agreement that you broke the moment you decided to lie to me, I said. I've also changed my will. You're no longer my beneficiary. Dad, please, Trevor begged, switching to English. We can work this out. We're family. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 72 years, but also stronger than I had in months. Family doesn't betray family, I said quietly. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't abandon their elderly father after taking everything he's worked for. Chiara was sobbing openly. Trevor looked sick. I want you both out of my house, I continued. Tonight, pack your things and go. Dad, where will we go? Trevor asked, voice breaking. I don't care, I said, meaning it. You should have thought about that before you planned to steal from me. I looked at my son, this stranger wearing my son's face, and felt something inside me finally break free from years of disappointment. You are no longer my son. 3 weeks later, the for sale sign went up in front of my house while Trevor called me every day begging for forgiveness. The real estate market was hot that spring, and my little house in South Boston sold in just 2 weeks for $15,000 more than I'd expected. 45 years of memories packed into boxes, but I felt lighter with each item I gave away or donated. Trevor and Chiara had been forced to move out the night of our confrontation. I'd watched from my bedroom window as they loaded their car with suitcases and boxes, Chiara crying, while Trevor made frantic phone calls trying to find them somewhere to stay. They ended up renting a cramped studio apartment in Revere, far from the colonial house they'd planned to steal from me. Dad, please, Trevor said during one of his daily calls. We made a mistake. We're family. Family doesn't betray family. I replied the same words I'd used that night. Then I hung up. The calls kept coming. Sometimes it was Trevor, voice breaking as he apologized. Sometimes it was Chiara sobbing in Italian, begging me to reconsider. I let them all go to voicemail. One afternoon I found a handwritten letter in my mailbox, written in Chiara's careful Italian script. She poured her heart out on 3 pages, explaining about her family's debts in Florence, about Trevor's failed businesses, about how desperate they'd become. She swore they never meant to hurt me, that they'd planned to take care of me after they moved to Italy. I read it twice, then threw it away. Pretty words couldn't erase what I'd heard that day at Marco's house. With the house sold and my affairs in order, I had some decisions to make. The first was easy. I donated $100,000 to the Veterans Support Network, a local charity that helped elderly veterans who had no family support. The irony wasn't lost on me. This is incredibly generous, Mr. Parker, said Janet Morrison, the charity's director, when I presented the check. This will help so many people who have nowhere else to turn. That's exactly why I'm giving it, I told her. Next, I found myself a cozy 1-bedroom apartment in a quiet complex in Arlington. It had a small balcony where I could grow tomatoes in pots, a modern kitchen, and neighbors who minded their own business. The rent was reasonable, and with my pension and the remaining $200,000 from the house sale, I was more financially secure than I'd ever been. Marco called me the day I moved into my new place. How are you settling in, my friend? He asked in Italian. Better than I expected, I said, looking around my clean, simple apartment. It's peaceful here. And your son's still calling. Every day, but I don't answer. Good, Marco said firmly. What they planned to do was unforgivable. You did the right thing, Eugene. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, I admitted. No, Marco said immediately. I have 3 children of my own. If any of them treated me the way Trevor treated you, I would do exactly what you did. Respect must be earned even from family, especially from family. 2 months after the confrontation, Trevor showed up at my apartment building. The security guard called up to ask if I wanted to see him. No, I said without hesitation. Tell him I'm not available. Through my balcony window, I watched Trevor sit on a bench across the street for 2 hours, occasionally looking up at my building. Eventually, he got back in his car and drove away. He didn't come back. As summer arrived and my tomato plants began to flourish on the balcony, I realized something had fundamentally changed inside me. The constant worry about Trevor's finances, the guilt over not helping enough, the exhausting effort of trying to maintain a relationship with people who saw me as an ATM. All of it was gone. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. 6 months later, as I sat in my peaceful garden reading an Italian novel, I realized that betrayal had given me the greatest gift of all, my independence. The morning sun filtered through my balcony's small oak tree. My tomato plants were heavy with fruit, and the Italian novel in my hands, Il nome della rosa by Umberto Eco was challenging but rewarding. I understood more with each page. This was my life now. Quiet mornings, good books, and the freedom to make every decision for myself. 3 months ago, I'd joined an advanced Italian conversation class at the Arlington Community Center. What started as language improvement had become something more valuable, a social circle of people who appreciated learning and growth. But it was Maria Santangelo who really caught my attention. A 65-year-old widow with silver hair and kind brown eyes. She'd moved to Boston after her husband passed. Like me, she was starting over learning Italian to connect with her heritage. My grandparents spoke only Italian when I was little. She told me over coffee after class. I always regretted not learning it properly. Now I have time. We began meeting regularly. Coffee, dinner, long walks through the public garden. Maria had a gentle laugh and a way of listening that made me feel truly heard for the first time in years. You seem different from when we first met, she observed one evening from my balcony. More settled in yourself. I found myself telling her the whole story. About Trevor Chiara, the betrayal and confrontation. That must have been devastating, she said, taking my hand. But look at you now. You saved yourself. Trevor still called occasionally, though, less frequently. The last time he sounded different, humbler, maybe genuinely sorry. Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he'd said, but losing you has been the biggest regret of my life. For the first time, I didn't hang up immediately. Trevor, I hope you've learned something from this. I have, he said quietly. I just hope it's not too late. That's up to you. I told him, then ended the call. I wasn't ready to forgive, maybe never would be, but I was no longer angry. Anger requires energy I preferred to spend on better things. Maria and I had started planning a trip to Italy for next spring. She wanted to visit her family's village in Tuscany, and I wanted to see Florence, the city Chiara had dreamed of returning to with my stolen money. The irony made me smile. You know what I've learned, I told Maria as we looked through travel brochures. Sometimes losing the people you love is the only way to find yourself again. She nodded thoughtfully. Trust is earned, not given. And sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who teach us to value ourselves. That's the truth I want to share with anyone listening to this story. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, honesty, and genuine care. When those things are missing, it's not betrayal to walk away. It's survival. If you're in a situation where people take advantage of your kindness, remember that it's never too late to choose yourself. I was 72 when I learned to say no, when I learned to protect what was mine, when I learned that being alone is better than being with people who don't value you. Trust is earned, not given. Your worth isn't determined by how much others can take from you. And sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to start over. It's never too late to begin again. Looking back at my journey, I realized my biggest mistake was trusting blindly instead of observing carefully. Don't be like me waiting until 72 to discover that family can betray you. The signs were always there, whispered conversations, exclusion from decisions, the way they spoke when they thought I couldn't understand. Grandpa stories like mine happen too often. Elderly people watch their life savings disappear into ungrateful hands. This true story taught me that God gives us intuition for a reason, that uncomfortable feeling when something isn't right. I ignored it too long, choosing hope over wisdom. The Lord works mysteriously, sometimes allowing betrayal to teach us our worth. When I finally stood up for myself, I felt God's strength flowing through me, giving me courage I never knew I possessed. Here's what I learned. Love without boundaries becomes enabling. Generosity without wisdom becomes foolishness. Family loyalty that isn't reciprocated becomes self-destruction. These grandpa stories aren't just entertainment, they're warnings wrapped in wisdom. If you're living this true story right now, don't wait like I did. Protect yourself before it's too late. Set boundaries. Ask questions. Demand respect. Your peace of mind is worth more than anyone's approval, even your children's. Sometimes the Almighty puts difficult people in our lives, not to drain us, but to teach us self-value. The hardest lesson, saying no, isn't selfish, it's sacred. You have the right to protect what you've worked for. Don't become another grandpa stories about an old fool who gave everything away. Learn from my mistakes. It's never too late to choose yourself, but always better to choose sooner. This true story changed my life. I hope it changes yours too. If my story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about your own experiences with family boundaries. Your wisdom might help someone avoid my mistakes. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that matter. Together we can help each other navigate life's most difficult relationships.